We're here with Rosemary Braun on March the 13th, 2008, and she's going to tell us about the various jobs she's had over time.
Well, my first jobs were at home, helping out my mom and dad. And the first, I think, paid job that I had was when I was 14. My mom was working full time, and it was summer. So my mom and dad gave me a whole list of jobs that I could do. And I would do laundry for $4.50 I'd make. And it would take me all day to hang it out in line, bring it back in, iron the sheets and the towels and everything. And that was my first job that I got paid for. And I did that all summer when I was 14. And then my first official job when I was 17, I remember going to the employment insurance office with my brother Rob. And we looked at all the jobs on the board for the summer. And I found one at a gas station. And I went and I applied and I got the job. And I worked, it was called Dernan's Texaco. And it was a self-serve gas station. And people came and they got their own gas. And I sat in the little office, and then they came in and they paid, and that's all I did was I took their money, and then they left. And I usually had to close up at the end, and there was a big safe in the bottom of the store, and I had to lock the money in it and close up shop and go home. So that was my first job, and I worked at that when I was about 17, and I just worked just for that summer, and then I quit and went back to school for high school. And then my next job, the next summer, I worked at a clothing store. It was called Favorable Fashions. And it was owned by a single woman who I think she was from Guyana. And her parents had a lot of money and they sent her up here. And so she bought the store. She knew nothing about clothing stores, but she loved clothes. And I was in there with her working, and it was quite a boring job actually, because we didn't have many customers. And then these women would come in looking for nice dresses, and I was like, I think I was 18, didn't know much about fashion, and it was like really hard to help them. So I did not enjoy that job, but I did it for a summer. So that was when I was 18. And then I went back to school for high school again. And then when I was 19, I got a job at Stone Crock, and it was a new Stone Crock down in Cambridge. And I was a waitress, and I learned how to waitress. And I actually worked there for that whole summer, and I worked into the fall when I was still in high school. And I worked on weekends, and it was a good job. I actually enjoyed waitressing. It was a fun job. And so I did that for about a year and a half, and then I found it too hard to do school and work. So I quit the job. And in the next summer, I got a job at Mother's Pizza Parlor. And it was a busy place, and I waitressed there, and I actually loved it. And I worked there for 2.5 years. I worked there this is all in Kitchener. All my jobs were in Kitchener. And I worked there on weekends and sometimes during the week while I went to school. And Mother's Pizza, I would work often from like 5 in the afternoon until like closing time, which would be on a weekend, it would be like 2 or 3 a.m. So it was a long shift. And so I did that for 2.5 years, like I said, through university. And that was a fun job. I enjoyed waitressing in both places. Backing up here. When I was working at Stone Crock, I also had a summer job at Dare Cookies. I got that because my aunt, Aunt Mary, worked at Dare. And so she got me in, and I was a cookie packer. And I worked at that from 7 in the morning until 3:30, Monday to Friday, the whole summer. And then often that I would hop in the car, drive to Stone Crock, and waitress from like 4 in the afternoon till 9 or 10 at night. And I was on my feet during the whole cookie packing time and the whole waitressing time. And my feet were always sore that summer. I remember coming home and just laying in bed, and my feet would just be pounding. And but it was good. And Dare Cookies was an extremely boring job. It was a factory job, and you just did the same thing day after day after day. But it paid well, and it was a good experience to know what being in a factory was like. After that, I went to university, and like I said, I worked through Mother's Pizza during university. And I graduated from university, and then I was looking for a full-time job, and I couldn't find a job in programming, which is what I wanted, so I found a job at Equitable Life. and I was a pension clerk. I worked in group pensions, and it was a good job. We did a lot of different types of things, and I enjoyed it. And I stayed in that department at Equitable for 2 years, and then I transferred to the information technology area where I was a programmer, and I was at Equitable for 11 years in total, and I moved from pension clerk to programmer to programmer analyst to analyst. I think systems analyst is what I was when I quit. And it was a good job. I enjoyed Equitable. That's where I met Doug. And, it was a good 11 years. I really enjoyed it there. I quit there in 1995, and I moved to Manulife. And I worked at Manulife for, I think, 2.5 years. And I was a programmer, systems analyst, something like that. Basically the same thing I did at Equitable, but I did it at Manulife. And I worked there until 1998 when Michelle was born. And then I quit Manulife, and I stayed home with Michelle for about 6 months, and then I started working at Doug's company, which was Galileo Group, and I did bookkeeping there for I think 1 or 2 days a week. I think I started with 1 day and then sometimes 2 days if it was busy. And Michelle would go to Grandma's house, Grandma and Grandpa Paintgrass. And she stayed there, and they loved having her, and she loved being there, so it worked out well. And I got to get out of the house for 1 day a week, or sometimes 2. And I worked there until Joel was born. And then I stopped working there, and I stayed home with Joel and Michelle. And I think after Joel was about a year, I went into Doug's new company, merged two, and did some programming for 1 or 2 days a week. And I did that for about a year or two, and then I stopped doing that and stayed home with Michelle and Joel again. And then when Michelle went to school full-time, Joel and I were kind of bored, and a job opportunity came along for Triac Mechanical, doing bookkeeping for them. And so I worked there, and it worked out well because Joel went to the owner's house, and they had a boy the same age, and they had a nanny. So Joel and Michael played all day while I worked, and I worked, 2 or 3 days. I don't remember, or part-time. Anyways, it wasn't full-time. I think it was half days for, I don't know. But anyways, part-time. And that worked out really well. And then Michael went to daycare, and so Joel stayed with me at work. I brought him to work with me, and that worked out for a couple of years, and I worked for Triac for 3 years until I quit when Joel was about 6. And those are the jobs that I've had. So it's been a lot, and some of them have been really boring and really good experiences, though, and some have been, I've enjoyed thoroughly, so lots of good experiences.
Great. Thanks, Rosemary, for telling us about your jobs.